So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Andy Burnham demanding that Reform UK be kind of held responsible for their or accountable for their lies and things like that. So it's a pretty bold statement, or punchy, should I say?
Sometimes asylum seekers arriving to live in their communities where there isn't the right infrastructure and there isn't right support. In your patch in Altrincham in Cheshire, there's suddenly a new asylum hotel with 300 people arriving. Do you think there's a political risk for your party on this issue?
Well, always, but I have great confidence in Yvette Cooper. She is one of the most experienced and knowledgeable ministers that there is. You know, she's one of the best politicians of our era. And
no, she's washed. We've said that before. Cooper is not good at her job at all.
What she laid out in the interview is exactly what she would be doing. She talked about the agreements that have to be put in place with other countries. That's the hard work. I did it in the Blair government. You have to be on the phone to ministers in other governments
so you
talking.
were actually immigration minister at that point, weren't you?
I was. And this is the thing, and let me get to reform, because Susanna rightly
you know, he's going to talk about Brexit and stuff like that in a post-Dublin 3 world where you can't, you know, send people back in to the safe country they arrived from. I don't see what Labour can do, really, if they're going to go down this angle of dealing with, like, the gangs and things like that.
Raised it. Going forward from here in 2025, they need to be held to account for the consequences of their own policies.
Reform should.
The big lie of Brexit, in my view, needs to be exposed because they promised us that it would control immigration. It's done the opposite. It's weakened control of immigration because it's weakened those relationships with our neighbours that are absolutely critical to having an orderly system. But at the same time, it's changed the nature of migration. So they've been issuing more and more visas for people coming from further afield, staying permanently, whereas with free movement, it would have been somebody would come for a few years and then go back. So,
or they could go to, you know, multiple other countries and things like that, or they might be here for a season or two. You know, we've seen things like seasonal immigration or seasonal workers completely fall off a cliff. So it might be people that are now looking at permanently moving to the UK, and that's what skewed the figures. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think that's one of the reasons why the figures are so much higher kind of post freedom of movement, because you would think logically freedom of movement would cause more migration, but it's actually less net. And also, you know, the ability for people to leave as well has been restricted.
Absolutely, I have confidence in what Yvette is doing. It's going to be hard. It was just interesting, if I could just say, listening to the Shadow Home Secretary about the Rwanda scheme. If they were so confident in it, I think they would have delayed the general election, wouldn't they, to when the first planes took off. But it's noticeable that they didn't do that because they know it was a colossal failure.
It would never have got off the ground. The courts would have stopped it, which is what they wanted. But I think in the end, they ran out of steam. I think that was the biggest problem Sunak had, and that kind of government, like, they knew the planes weren't going to take off.
And waste of money. And they, like with everything else, they weren't prepared to kind of own any of their issues. They cut and run. And just to hear all of that just now was just, you know,
really wound you up, hasn't it?
It has, because they're just not. There's no humility there in saying, yes, we failed. We need to learn the lessons.
I mean, they're not going to say that because their argument is always going to be that they would have done it better. That's what reform. Well, once you let the hecklers in charge, that's when they fall apart. You know, we saw that with Boris Johnson. But reform would always say, "Oh, we'd had the Royal Navy in there stopping the Channel crossings, or ships that have pushed them back, or whatever nonsense they can come out with." You know, would have left the ECHR. You know, the consequences be damned. That's what they would have gone for. But this is what I'm saying. Like, the thing, like, wanting reform to be held accountable is never going to happen. Like, the media won't do it. You know, Farage will always argue, I would have done it better. You know, it's kind of the Mark Wahlberg argument of it wouldn't have gone down like that when he was talking about the plane on 9/11. So that's kind of what that's about. But yeah, I'm glad Andy Burnham, at least he's talking about it. It's positive in that sense. So yeah, he's a good political operator. He's a lot better than probably all of the front bench, to be honest with you, but it's a low bar. It's a low one. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.